Hello and welcome to the hard sell, where the stick in the swill-bucket rattles back. Here comes another nice, simple have a break.
Have a break.
Today's random sampling is from Easter Monday 1995, and a showing on Channel 4 of the film Drop Dead Fred. Oh, so sad. Such a neat premise, such a cool cast, given to people who clearly had no idea what they were doing. Pop quiz. Who directed Drop Dead Fred? Anyone? The answer is Ate de Jong. You haven't heard of him, and that's because he's not very good. Case in point, Drop Dead Fred, which never settles on a tone or point and gives the talented cast absolutely no help whatsoever. Not that he didn't have a vision. Apparently he rewrote the script extensively, adding serious undercurrents inspired by his experience of incestuous sexual abuse. Fun. Which explains why it veers from scatological slapstick to sometimes genuinely harrowing psychological insight, and then back again to noise and fart gags, giving the viewer a case of whiplash that's only mitigated by the basic incompetence of the filmmaking. Should have been much, much better. Has its fans though, and I myself have watched it several times, so there's another glass house shattered. On to the adverts. The Wife, in the all-new updated 1995 model, with power steering. You couldn't move for Renault adverts in the mid-90s. They must have been one of the most popular car makers of the age. All with various arrangements of what always turned out to be Johnny and Mary by Robert Palmer. After a smooth jazz guitar cover was used for the Clio and turned out so successful, it became the theme tune for the entire company. Anyway, this one's for the Laguna. Brand slogan, "It all worked out beautifully." Which led to several garden path narratives, usually surrounding an extremely smug man, who in this case is implied to be having an affair, but actually isn't.
It's all worked out beautifully with the new Laguna.
Or is he? Who cares? At least he isn't a murderer who apparently gets away with it.
Une voiture ordinaire?
It's all worked out beautifully. After a
Newcastle, Sydney, New York, Gstaad, Tokyo, Marble Arch.
Hard day or a heavy night, add the Radox secret blend of herbs. Unwind weary bodies or wake up sleepy heads.
night, Pat.
Morning, darling.
The voice of Brian Cox there, not the starry one, the Succession one, narrating the inconsequential story of two improbably beautiful people bathing in Radox, which either wakes you up or soothes you down, depending on what hemisphere you're in at what time. What a useful product. And it does this by making hands out of its steam and either giving you a rub down or beating the shit out of you. Metaphorically, of course. Just make sure you get the right one for the right purpose. You don't want to end up in a fist fight with your own hot water right before bed.
Trust Radox to relax and revive body and mind.
Fruit corner from Muller.
Talking of improbably beautiful people, here's Naomi Campbell, who presumably didn't come cheap, in an advert for Muller yogurt, Fruit Corner specifically, in which I absolutely do not believe anyone involved, Naomi included, did not know exactly what they were doing. You'll see what I mean.
Combines real fruit in syrup with a unique taste and distinctive creamy texture of pure, thick, velvety smooth Muller yogurt.
Strange to think there was a time before Fruit Corners, before someone had the idea of separating the yoghurt and the fruit into their own apertures for you to mix at will. But it's true. Even though they feel like they've been around forever, they actually only launched with Muller themselves in 1988. In the UK, that is. By 1992, they were Britain's most popular yoghurt, and by 1995 they could clearly afford one of the most notoriously expensive and difficult supermodels. Obviously, it's a case of selling the yoghurt through luxurious, sexually charged sophistication, which Naomi embodied perhaps more than any of her contemporaries. She's also helped out by the presence of Ian McShane at his most purring on the voiceover.
Fruit corner from Muller.
And then there's that final image.
How can you behave yourself with something so wicked?
Like I said, I refuse to believe they didn't know exactly what this looked like. They know perfectly well what they're doing, including Naomi.
From Muller. Who else?
Weeder flakes.
What's that, baby?
Taste the golden swirl, a whirling down, puts a wiggle in a walk, a giggle in a talk. A Weeder flakes goes round.
Hello, baby. Yeah, this is the Big Bopper speaking, inexplicably drafted into service to sell the Weetabix Company's answer to bran flakes to small children in 1995, for heaven's sake.
Ain't nothing in the world like that crunchy swirl to make him act so funny. Let me tell you, honey.
10 years earlier, this would at least have made sense in a nostalgic context. Mainstream nostalgia always points 20 to 30 years in the past, the formative years of the then adult generation, who were usually the ones making the adverts. That's why the 50s were all over advertising and popular culture in general in the 80s, as seen in Back to the Future, and why the 80s were all over the place 10 years ago, as also seen in Back to the Future. Bob Zemeckis is a smart cookie. And of course the 90s are the in-decade now, with the aughties waiting in the wings to take its place. Best get ready for nostalgia about the streets and the ordinary, boys. Anyway, back to the doomed cereal.
Well, that's the taste we like. Weeder flakes.
You know, the Big Bopper, bless him, was never all that relevant to begin with. He wasn't a straight-up novelty act, but he was the kind of musician who could make a song called The Purple People Eater Meets the Witch Doctor and have it fit fairly comfortably into his discography. I mention it because this is far from the first advert to use a rewrite of Chantilly Lace. Woman's Own, for instance, were using it as their theme tune 10 years earlier.
Now Woman's Own stands on its own, has everything I'm looking for.
But you'll notice they didn't do the full-on bopper impressions being attempted here, presumably in a desperate attempt to appeal to small children. Meaning it ultimately falls between two stools, because only the parents are going to recognise the vocals and they're not going to care. To the kids, meanwhile, it's just another silly voice.
Weeder flakes.
Let's face it, Wheater Flakes, which I remind you are basically off-brand bran flakes and therefore no fun whatsoever, needed all the help they could get with this demographic, if not more. Going so obviously uncool right from the outset, it's almost like preemptive surrender.
That's the taste we like. Weeder flakes.
In marked contrast to all that, here's some classic alcoholic surrealism. This is how you advertise lager in the mid-90s. Inscrutable, visibly expensive bollocks, set in a desert with impossibly voluptuous rock formations and Morrowind-anticipating giant crane-legged beasts of burden. If you're thinking it's a bit Dali-esque, well done, Poirot. Specifically, it's inspired by two of his more famous paintings. No, not The Persistence of Memory, aka the one with the melty clocks. Specifically, The Temptation of St. Anthony and Millet's Architectonic Angelus. I'd show them to you, but I'd have to pay a premium. Old Avida Dollars was smart when it came to financially protecting his legacy, the fascist prick. Anyway, eventually some sort of point has to emerge, and that's covered by Mr. Tim Dry, who might be marginally better known as Tick out of Ultra 80s mime duo Tick and Tock, but probably isn't.
A glass of the unusual, sir?
What is it?
The metamorphosis of lager, sir. Enigma draft lager from Guinness. It began as a spark of inspiration in the mind of a genius.
Very smooth.
Got that? Enigma, the new lager from Guinness. Incredible and unique and a work of genius in ways never elaborated upon. At all. In the slightest. But look how weird and artsy everything is. Surely it can't just be a bog-standard lager. There must be something going on here.
What is it?
The metamorphosis of lager, sir.
Metamorphosis? Into what, though? Because it still looks like lager to me. Not that we'll ever know either way, because Enigma came and went almost unnoticed. Although I don't think I'm sticking my neck out too far by assuming that it was in fact just a bog-standard lager. A bit like Guinness's far better-known brand of the stuff, Harp, which Enigma effectively replaced in the GB market. Ultimately, the only difference between the two that I can discern, apart from a widget I suppose, is that people actually bought Harp, and still do in Northern Ireland, while Enjima died on its arse within 3 years and is completely forgotten now. The advertising just makes it seem, rather oddly, too much like hard work. If I want an abstract surrealist riddle with no solution, I watched last year at Marienbad.
Very smooth.
I have to go now. My giraffe is on fire.
Talk about getting puzzled on some brew.
What are we going to do? I can't wear that.
Next, an adorable little girl manages to enlist her mum as washerwoman for an entire pantomime, presumably for free. All thanks to Persil.
Mummy?
One opening night.
Our costumes are filthy.
One mucky problem.
All of them. You will?
One magic solution. New generation Persil. The best powder Persil have ever made.
Did I say Persil? I meant new generation Persil. It's an exercise in damage control after the Persil Power debacle. If you're not familiar, basically they changed the recipe for regular Persil into a milder version of Power without the chemical catalyst that ate clothes alive. They just about got away with it.
Best because it shifts tough stains first time on more fabrics at more temperatures. Performing so brilliantly, you can hear the applause for miles.
Could have done without the eyebrows. I'm hardly one to cast eyebrow-related nasturtiums, but there's just something vaguely unsettling about it. If they employed CGI there, why would you employ CGI there? Could the kid not raise them high enough herself?
I hear they're doing Alibaba and the 40 Thieves next.
Like schools prepare their Christmas plays that far into the future. Besides, it'll be next year's class's problem. Maybe their leading girl's mum will turn out to wash with Daz instead, and everything will be ruined. Still, like I said, Persil succeeded in surviving what did look to be a genuinely dicey situation. The extent to which the calculatedly gruff Prolian Lancashire accented voiceover on the advertising contributed to this is unknown, but I wouldn't rule it out.
New generation Persil performs brilliantly right across the wash.
Finally, another Renault. You see what I mean about being ubiquitous. I'm surprised anyone drove anything else in the mid-90s. And then I paid extra to top and tail the break-in this way. They told us a saloon at the start. Now here's a pitch for their small runabout whatever machine. The Clio, as mentioned earlier. And as it's 1995, that means Nicole, as played by Estelle Skornick. Initially in a camisole, to ensure the more perverted types keep watching.
However good you look, there's always room for a little improvement.
As As usual, she's going about her French business as only the English think the French do. Going into a beauty salon and apparently being sewn into a pair of jeans. I particularly like this montage and the use it makes of Skornik's expressive face. And of course her father dutifully shows up to recite the catchphrase.
Nicole?
Papa?
Why yes, that is Vincent Cassel. Instantly recognisable by his tiny eyes and not quite famous yet, which is why he's doing this sort of thing. All to the tune of Johnny and Mary again, this time for gypsy guitar and whistling. Robert Palmer died a rich man thanks to these French cars. The Clio eventually had to explicitly develop away from it in order to keep people interested.
Don't stop.
Now with even more refinement, the new generation Clio.
And then it's back to the film, unfortunately. The second and most potent Britpop summer is just around the corner from this broadcast, but you wouldn't necessarily notice. There's very little here from that particular zeitgeist. Naomi Campbell represents a very different sense of the word fashionable. And to be honest, the peak of her and her supermodel generation's power was probably 3 or 4 years behind her by now. Wheater Flakes are just hopeless. It feels like they're trying to be cool, but have no idea what that means, no interest in finding out, and have disastrously miscalculated all around. The Renaults, like Naomi, are fashionable all right, but aren't even trying to reach that audience. Even the Clio, which is kind of aiming at young drivers, are clearly not going for anyone who knows the difference between creation records and food records. Persil is mumsy as all get out, which just leaves the Enjima of Guinness, who definitely want to attract young alcoholics, but weren't going to and didn't, with Dali references and random non sequiturs. And given that lager was the ocean in which much Britpop culture swam, it's hard not to see this as a massive missed opportunity. Should have just relaunched Heart without the sexism. No, actually with equal opportunity sexism. Because there were ladettes as well as lads now, after all. Just hire the biggest misanthrope on staff to write 3 or 4 scenarios starring the biggest Club 1830 idiots you can think of. Paint a Union Jack on the can and you're away. No faffing around with avant-garde camera angles and artistic pretensions. And a damn sight cheaper too. Wouldn't have made the lager any better though. You just sat through a Bob the Fish production. Nice! If you haven't already, you absolutely must check out bobthefish.org.uk. Literally hundreds more videos not unlike that one, adding up to days worth of entertainment and all absolutely free. But if you're not a cold-hearted skinflint, you can always support us on Patreon. For as little as anything at all, you can make programmes like the one you just watched possible in the first place, and become eligible for bonus material such as glimpses of the book I'm writing about the BBC, monthly riffings on random commercial breaks, the complete archives of the angry political satire magazine Two Sons, and even the odd very occasional bonus video essay unavailable anywhere else. If nothing else, you should prevent me from starving and or freezing to death in the foreseeable future, so that'll be nice. No pressure or anything. You make it what it is.